It's the Alex Jones Show, live from Austin, Texas. I'm Paul Joseph Watson, filling in for Alex Jones. We're going to be taking your calls in the next half an hour for Lionel at 1-800-259-9231. But Lionel is a nationally syndicated radio host and television personality, as well as media commentator. You can check him out at lionelmedia.com. Also does a series of great YouTube videos, which we occasionally feature on Infowars.com. And of course, he's been a regular guest over the past couple of months. Lionel, welcome to the show.
But never Paul Joseph Watson, or as the last caller called you, Michael.
Michael.
Is this some kind of a code, some type of a black ops, Michael?
There must be some conspiracy behind it.
Yes. But let me just first, kudos to you, my friend. Excellent, excellent, excellent job. Touche, bravo.
You're too kind, Lionel.
I'm not being too kind. This is tough stuff. If you were doing conventional talk radio, you could be talking about the Judices from Real Housewives of New Jersey being sentenced, or Derek Jeter's farewell, or maybe some other non-irrelevant. But you're talking about pandemics, death, the new Black Plague. That's rather taxing. Good for you. Excellent, excellent job, sir.
I guess we should be talking about Chelsea Clinton's baby or something like that. That's the
incredible timing, don't you think? How did they do that? But I'll tell you something. I want to, and also, please, Michael, let me, that's your nickname from now on. That's our code.
Alex gives me enough nicknames. I've got enough as it is.
I can imagine. We'll call you Misha to make it sound more
European.
Porky Parkish. But anyway, your treatises, your disquisitions, your journalistic pieces have been superb. And I've told people so much as that read what he is saying. Read his, meaning you, read your work. And when you first read the actual subject matter, you think, oh, come on, this guy's gone off the reservation now. I mean, finally, Paul Joseph Watson, a.k.a. Misha, has finally lost it. And then you read it, and again, it is cited, documented, linked, not merely you opining, not what you think the world is, but you, and this goes for Alex and David and the entire team, you never merely say, you know, I think that never. It's always, no, here is the story, here is what I've heard. So again, I'm always defending you, Paul Joseph Watson. I'm always defending you with all of that Alex Jones. He's what? He's what? Well, he's what? Is he ecclesiastical? He acts like a reverend? Is that it? Now, if you're on a religious show and you say the same thing and you start speaking in tongues on a Sunday morning, and I in no way am in any way trying to impugn people of faith, but you can say the same thing, and yet that is okay. But when you're vitriolic, you're hyperbolic, you're excited, you're perhaps exaggerated by some standards, then people say, this guy's off the reservation. And the reason why is because we're used to the news being so bloody boring. Absolutely just soporific. Just, you know, radio or TV version of Ambien. But I got to tell you something. You brought up something last week, which again, I find myself 3 times a day at least saying, what kind of a parallel, I was just telling Nico on the break, what kind of a parallel universe am I in? What is that? Why doesn't anybody run out in the street and say, David Cameron before the UN, you're David Cameron, you're David Cameron, not mine, yours.
Don't lump him on me, Lionel.
He stood up and he said, he basically dusted off the cognitive infiltration theme, which we'll get to. And in front of the UN, dusted off this, I thought, hoary, antediluvian, ancient idea about going after conspiracy theories. You would think somebody in the group would say, listen, DC, come here, lose that talk. you're really, this is the United States, I know this is the UN, but don't talk about telling people if they opine about 7/7 or 9/11 that somehow they're practicing nonviolent extremism.
3 days after that, I believe the Home Secretary, Theresa May, came out in the UK and added to that, said that basically anyone who wants to use Twitter or Facebook, who is a domestic extremist, in their words, a non-violent extremist, would have to get government permission to do so. I mean, this is creepy, it's Orwellian, but as he said, the very fact that he's talking about it would raise suspicions. I mean, that would make people believe that 7/7 and 9/11 were in some way staged if they're having to go to these lengths to censor people.
That's precisely right. If he were to say, now I know many of you today believe that I am a reptilian sorcerer. What? No, we didn't think that. Why would it? And I know to you who think that I'm daft. No, maybe we should. Look, I thought, and I'm sorry, but for that terrible accent, I in no one in any way want to appear Anglophobic or whatever the particular phrase is, but he's speaking before the UN, whatever that's worth, and this is what he comes up with. Let's hearken back to the granddaddy of all, one of the most frightening pieces of either juridical or legal or academic balderdash, bunkum, and hooey was a piece co-written by Cass R. Sunstein and Adrian Vermeule, I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, both from Harvard Law School, entitled Conspiracy Theories. This is the Magna Carta. This was in 2008. And if I could, and I don't like reading things, but there's no way I could, Michael, do this justice without reading just this. This is from the précis or the abstract. Many millions of people hold conspiracy theories. They believe that powerful people have worked together in order to withhold the truth about some important practice or some terrible event. Stop right there. That's history. Go through history. Governments, people, organizations, holding back the truth. This is the subject matter of an academic treatise on where did these people come up with this plumb crazy idea that governments. What has your whole show been today? It's about Ebola and the lies, the prevarication, the harm that is being hidden. But let me this is what he said. I must. Those who subscribe to conspiracy theories may create serious risks, including risks of violence. And the existence of such theories raises questions, raises significant challenges for policy and law. The first challenge is to understand the mechanisms by which conspiracy theories prosper. The second challenge is to understand how such theories might be undermined. Now, he's talking about, not only do we want to understand, okay, fine. We can talk about why are people superstitious? Why are people not, whatever. Fine, I understand that. But how can we undermine them? Here is the important, and I'll just leave it at this. Because those who hold conspiracy theories typically suffer from a crippled epistemology, in accordance with which it is rational to hold such theories, the best response, let me stop right there. This is Obama's regulation czar. This is the husband of Samantha Power. This is a noted legal heavyweight, rock star, juridical and academic bigwig. He says, the best response consists in cognitive infiltration of extremist groups. Paul Joseph Watson, every single thing that you talk about, that I talk about, that anybody talks about, could, by any stretch of the imagination, be construed as extreme. Extreme by what standard?
That's the question we'll ask after the break, Lionel. Stay there. It's the Alex Jones Show live, Infowars.com. We'll be back with your calls. Don't go away. We're back live on the Alex Jones Show with Lionel of LionelMedia.com. Going to be taking a few of your calls for Lionel at 1-800-259-9231. That's 1-800-259-9231. So get those lined up for the next segment. We just played a clip of David Cameron in front of the United Nations last week. Basically, he was talking about ISIS. He made a comparison basically saying that anybody who is a non-violent extremist is in the same category as ISIS. What did he characterize as a non-violent extremist? Basically, anyone who questions the government narrative on events such as the 7/7 attacks in London or 9/11. So it's basically this process, and we asked the question before the break, what is considered extreme? This process of creating a new brand of thought crime to, in fact, brand individuals who espouse it. Any questioning of the government narrative whatsoever is not only a conspiracy theory anymore, which they've used as that pejorative term to demonize free thought, to demonize the questioning of any motive of any person in a position of power. Now they've gone one step further, Lionel, and are saying that you could be in league with the terrorists. I mean, we saw after 9/11, we must never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories, George W. Bush. Now they're saying that we could be in league with the terrorists by espousing this dangerous notion of questioning government. How extreme is that?
Well, let me ask you this, Paul Joseph Watson. Let's say I were to question the government, and I hate air quotes, but I will do it. I question the government not out of any kind of nefarious wrongdoing, but let's just say I think they're inept. Let's say that I question the Warren Commission. Now, another question is there a statute of limitations to my questioning the government? If I question the findings of the Maine in 1898, there was certainly complicity. I think we all can understand that. If I were to question the United States' role in, let's say, Operation Ajax, the overthrow of Mossadegh. Oh, by the way, another question is, let's say I were to question something now and something is declassified. So imagine a Paul Joseph Watson in the era of Mossadegh and the Shah who says, I think the CIA was involved in that. Under this theory, were it to be enacted, Paul Joseph Watson, a.k.a. Michael, is incarcerated. Now, years later, the CIA declassifies it and says, you know what, we were right. Do we let you out? Isn't that called academic quest? I mean, do because I can question, and not 9/11, but I can question anything. I can question the government in saying that Agent Orange was far more lethal and teratogenic and problematic and depleted uranium and DU. I'm not saying the government. I could be questioning the finding based on ineptitude, bad sample size. I could have a pretty clinical way. So this broad brush admonition, don't question your elders, covers everything from the most benign disagreement. Let me ask you this. Last week, Senator Bob Graham of the 9/11 Commission said, I want this redacted testimony back. I want it known regarding Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11. Is that nonviolent extremism? Is he not calling into question his own commission? Is this internal nonviolent extremist? Is he an internal conspiracy theorist? Is he questioning himself? I mean, think about this. It is our duty. It is our duty. It is inherent. It is in our DNA to question authority, question anything. And you know why? Because we want to. I don't need permission. And by the way, I find this fascinating. As you know, Paul, there are brilliant people out there who, by virtue of having these newfangled devices that we're talking on, can look at something. Remember when they said, look at the video of this horrible ISIS or ISIL or Daesh or Sham? I mean, the names grow. Remember when Gaddafi was ultimately spelled 38 different ways. We like to do that.
Your calls for Lionel coming up after the break, lionelmedia.com. We're going to talk about media narratives and the collapse of trust in the mainstream media. This is the Alex Jones Show live, Infowars.com. Your calls coming up. Stay tuned.
Introducing the first proprietary oxygen-based intestinal cleanser, OxyPowder. Backed by real FDA-approved phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials. People are suffering from all kinds of digestive issues these days. All the toxins from the air, the food, the water, ultimately ends up in the gut or affects the gut. My main focus was to come up with a remedy for this, something that's safe and effective that anyone can take on a regular basis to keep their intestinal lining clean. My recommendation is to clean your intestines at least 2 to 3 times a week to prevent the toxic buildup from going into your bloodstream. Take your health into your own hands and start cleansing your body today with OxyPowder. Secure your OxyPowder today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com.
We played before the break David Cameron saying in front of the UN, non-violent extremism includes anyone who questions government narratives. And to me, Lionel, I mean, on Twitter, we often see mainstream talking heads lashing out. It's always fun to abuse them on Twitter, like I did with Keith Olbermann. But often they come to me, they lash out against InfoWars without even, being prodded in the first place. You mentioned Cass Sunstein with the cognitive infiltration, subverting the so-called conspiracy movement. This just suggests to me nothing else but how insecure they are about being challenged on any narrative whatsoever. What does it say to you about their insecurity?
Well, first and foremost, you mentioned Twitter, and a shameless plug for mine. And I tweet and retweet and favorite, and if I could do something else to add approbation to your tweets, I would. But I'm at Lionel Media, and I'm a Twitter fanatic. I think it is the pulse and the heartbeat of the world. But here is the thing I don't understand. When, and I don't want to just make too much out of this, but how much can I question? Let me ask again, is there a statute of limitations to that which I question? If I think there were very serious questions as to Vietnam and our involvement and the Gulf of Tonkin, which has been admitted, is that exempted? Next, how can somebody who is theoretically conversant with the First Amendment, a legal scholar at some of the best, ostensibly, legal or law schools in the nation, dare to suggest that the government, ostensibly, should be involved in quashing and quelling and basically stifling speech? As you know, Paul, the First Amendment, in fact, the Bill of Rights, only limits action when the federal government or the state government are involved in violating your law. The federal government, the state government, has to violate your First Amendment right, not individual citizens. The 13th Amendment is the only Bill of Rights, the only constitutional amendment that a private citizen can actually violate, can actually commit. It's the slavery or anti-slavery provision and variations thereof. So here we have, and just think about this, the irony of this, a law professor advocating, not boycotting, which is fine. By God, if those conspiracy theorists out there spew this bunkum, why, you tell them, fine, write your congressman, fine, petition, go ahead, nothing wrong with it. They're talking about cognitive infiltration via the government. This erases any doubt as to a First Amendment involvement in this. How can anyone not say, wait a minute, hold the press to stop, with a president who is ostensibly a constitutional professor? I mean, and this is so blatant, so pathetic, as you say, so desperate, so much of an indicium, of an indication of how this is making headway. And again, there are so many levels the word conspiracy theorist, I love to harken back to the great Gore Vidal, who said, I am not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy analyst. And the word conspiracy theory has been basically a code word for the unspeakable truth. And if you're a truther, how did they appropriate truther as a pejorative? How did this happen? A falser, I can understand. And if you ask any questions from, you pick the subject. This is, we need to revolt non-violently, what am I saying? Non-extremist, but say, wait a minute, no, we are not going to do this. And the best way to protest this non-violently is to fill the airways, fill the Twitter world, the ether, the social media, with your protestations against this idea. Because remember, Paul, what you were talking about, this entire first portion of the show was how the government is not being straight with you and with us regarding Ebola. Is that a conspiracy theory? And if it is, who's conspiring? Who are the conspirators? I don't understand. You might be saying that the government's inept. The government's not doing its job. The government's dropping the ball. We need better CDC officials. We need to fund them. They're inept. That's not conspiratorial, false flag, inside job. You just might be saying, you guys don't know what the hell you're doing. It's that simple.
We're talking with Lionel, LionelMedia.com. Mercedes in Oregon. You're on the air with Lionel. Go ahead, Mercedes.
Hello, Lionel and Paul. Welcome. I wanted to say welcome to, the States, but now you're there with Ebola, so I don't know.
I don't personally have Ebola yet, but thank you.
Maybe you should be going home before there's a quarantine or something.
Maybe we'll all get locked in.
Yeah.
There are worse places to be locked in, though, I'll say that. So what's your question or comment for Lionel?
People. Yeah, you're definitely with good people. So, yeah, extremism, we have to exactly say no. We, not only is it InfoWars, but we have to do a counter narrative. We're the counter narrative to what they're doing. They go in front of the UN and say these horrible things, and we're just, I'm on Twitter too. I don't think I should be, attacked in any way by the government just for saying, hey, you guys aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing.
That's exactly the point. I mean,
that's precisely right.
Go ahead, Lionel.
No, that's precisely right. And Mercedes, or where I'm from, we say Mercedes. I firmly believe that not only does and I say the government, I don't even know what that means. It's not the government. There are people who work for the government. They're fine. They're great patriots and wonderful. But we use that term to speak of a few. But I don't think people realize how big this is. I'm telling you right now, when you listen to me, I know people in the conventional media, in the usual nuts and bolts, meat and potato, terrestrial, old-fashioned radio, TV, and they're living in the 50s. Not the 1950s, the 50s. They don't know anything. They're the people who say, I don't understand this Twitter. I guarantee you right now, what we're saying right now lives on in a cloud, in an area that is so huge, so colossal, so, dare I invoke Gulliver, Brobdingnagian, so enormous. Mainstream media don't understand it. These people on TV who fancy themselves as being, the cable news warriors, on their best day, they don't approximate this world out there that represents far more people than anybody can understand. So what happens is, as this, and mark my words, Mercedes and Paul, one day And I don't know when it is, but very, very soon, tomorrow, next week, somebody of note will all of a sudden say, you know what? I listen to that show, and I believe in that. And somebody will say, wow, of note. You know, when Jenny McCarthy, bless her heart, became viewed as the point person for concerns people had in inoculation and vaccine-related diseases, that was a dark day in any kind of, by the way, vaxxer. Have you heard that, Paul? Vaxxers.
Vaxxers. That's the new pejorative.
Yes, yes. So we need, eventually you're going to hear more people. Rosie O'Donnell, bless her heart, Charlie Sheen. They're kind of been, by virtue of a very scared media, lumped in as the standard bearers, you know, the bellwethers of this new, no. And this is not in any way a slam or a pejorative against them. But when you start hearing people say, no, I agree with this, or I watch this, I understand this, when you start to see the Daily Shows and Colbert and others realize that what they're doing is a cutesy-fied, if that's a word, version of the mainstream media direct, when all of a sudden, like this discussion becomes cool, and people will run to it. And they will say, you mean this has been there? Yes. There are more of us than them. There was a person one time, a dear friend of mine, who gave the expression, he says, you know, there are so many of us that we could drown them, and I know this sounds crude, but he said, we could drown them in our urine. And I thought, oh my God, what a horrible metaphor. But I realized we forget our power, the enormity of this. Because most of us right now are at home or at work, or we're listening maybe later, a week or so, a year later, and we look around and we're saying, is anybody out there? Oh, yes, absolutely. And all that I have said is, and I think you as well, is I'm not afraid of anything. Paul Joseph Watson, what do you wish you didn't know? What truth do you wish you didn't know? What are you sorry for knowing? What information do you wish you were dumb about? Because I haven't figured it out yet. I have not found anything where I said, boy, you know what? I wish I didn't know that historical fact. I wish I didn't know that cancer scare. I wish I didn't know the truth about this war that I thought was noble. Ignorance is not bliss. It's dangerous. And I've never apologized to anybody for wanting to know the truth. I ask questions. You've seen kids. What do kids always ask? Why? Go to room. Why? Go to bed. Why? You need your sleep. Why? And they're not being pesky. It's a beautiful question. Why? I don't understand this. I'm not satisfied. I'll give you an example if I could. Did you happen to see Norah O'Donnell speak recently on CBS with Prince Turki Al Faisal of Saudi Arabia regarding ISIS?
Yeah, we played that clip on the Sunday show, I believe.
Now, wait a minute. Stop. This is where I imagine this scene, like a Kubrick movie. Somebody walks off on the set wearing a headset. He's a stagehand or somebody, and he says, stop, stop, stop. I can't take this anymore. Ask him about how many people they've beheaded. They beheaded a woman recently for sorcery. Did you know that? You're asking a man who lives in who rules basically over a country that beheads women for sorcery. Now let me just let that marinate a little bit. Ask him about his brother, Abdel Rahman Al Faisal, who's the paymaster for ISIS or ISIL or IS or AQI or Al-Nusra Front or Al-Qaeda or Daesh or whatever neologism you want to give it. And Khorasan. You know how many people, did you know this? How many Khorasan members there are, Paul Joseph Watson? 50.
And this was a group that they just invented. I mean, it's basically Al-Nusra, who they were supporting previously, because all the Syrian rebels, the so-called Syrian rebels, defected to Al-Nusra. So they just renamed the group to hide the fact that they had indirectly supported the group, before this so-called bombing. It's amazing. Quick call, Judy in Florida. Go ahead, Judy.
Hi, Paul. This is really great to speak with you. I've talked to other hosts on Alex's program. I guess I've called almost as much as McGruff at this point. But I had a story I wanted to tell you very, very quickly, and then I had my question. But I sent out an email when I found out about the first Ebola case, and I sent out to, my network and essentially, discussed what I felt was the gravity of the situation and said this is not fear-mongering, but this is something everybody needs to be aware of, blah, blah, blah. And I brought up the point that the plane had touched down with patient 0 at Dulles International. And the reason why that's significant is because I used to live very close to it. And I got an email back from a very close friend's son, and he said in a very contrite, very condescending way, Ebola is not transferable during incubation. It can only be transmitted with direct contact with feces, saliva, and blood. And that's when most severe symptoms have set in. And, I said, well, it's also potentially airborne. I said in a email back to him, and I sent yours and Du's report that had the video of that facility that held the monkeys, the quarantine unit in Reston, Virginia, and, to further validate what I was trying to say. And the thing is, the skating rink and the statue in Reston is I used to work right down the street from it, and I used to live in Reston, Virginia. And this guy still lives in Reston, Virginia. But, I think he poo-paws a lot of what I have to say, but I guess what I'm trying to get to is that I'm really kind of tired of being, talked to in a condescending way by anyone, because what I see you and Alex and anybody's got, any want to know the truth, that we're the intellectuals. We're the ones that are the shepherds. We are shepherding those, and we're trying to save the lives of those that are, right now condemning us, that are, not the government that's actually, or the New World Order cabal.
Exactly. That's why we're taking so much flack. That's why, trust in media is now back to its record low. I mean, people are seeing right through that, and they're seeing right through the attacks. So, I mean, that's definitely the case. We're going to be back in the next segment, final segment, with Lionel. We're going to talk about media narratives and how we can shape them. LionelMedia.com is the website, or at Lionel Media on Twitter. This is the Alex Jones Show live, breaking news as it happens at Infowars.com. Stay right there. We'll be back with Lionel after the break. Final segment of the Alex Jones Show with Lionel. There's an update coming from Dallas health officials. They're about to give a press conference here in the next 20 minutes or so about the Ebola situation. Obviously, 100 people exposed at least in Dallas, so hopefully there are no more confirmed cases, but there is about to be another update on that situation in Dallas, so we'll be tracking that, of course, across the website. We're currently talking to Lionel of LionelMedia.com. Lionel, just in the last few minutes, I wanted to get into this recent Gallup poll. Trust in mainstream media returns to its previous all-time low of 40%. And again, it goes back to this David Cameron UN speech. They're petrified of losing their ability to control the narrative. They still have to act in concert to do so, the mainstream media, because they're losing their individual power, their audience. But so long as they can corral everybody around a talking point or around a narrative, they're still able to sway huge numbers of the US population. But obviously their power in terms of that is diluting. We had Drudge 15 years ago go in front of the National Press Club and basically say that the media landscape is about to completely change. He was dead on accurate. That happened over the next 15 years. Given that they're so insecure now, apparently, about losing the ability to control this narrative, how do you see the media landscape developing over the next 15 years?
Developing?
Degenerating, maybe.
Degenerating, perhaps, pock-filled. Not only that, conventional talk radio, you name it. Just to give you an idea, first and foremost, I think if I know Alex like I think I know Alex, if you were to be at a press conference and somebody were to turn to you and say, yes, and you basically asked the question and said, okay, That's it. Because believe it or not, in certain mainstream media, and I kid you not, I can say that on a family show. They send somebody out to a report. We'll say, kid, all right, Watson, you're new here. We'll give you $25 or a six-pack if you can get the mic flag in the press conference. A little card, little square that fits on the microphone showing the television or radio station's call letters. If you can get that mic flag in, $25 and a six-pack. You think I'm kidding? You don't have to know anything to be in mainstream media. You got to look like Barbie or Ken or be cute, and and that's it. I mean, no, nobody will ever call you in and say, Watson, what the hell do you know about? No, I don't need to know anything. The other day, when Rick Perry was talking, I think it was Sean Hannity, Rick Perry said, oh, there's nothing to worry about. Imagine this thought experiment, Paul. What if somebody said, hey, Rick, did you hear the news? Let's just assume we're at a press conference. They just found out that there is a vaccine for Ebola. It's called Gardasil. I mean, he would be all over that. Really? I still have that Merck deal going. This is a guy who basically, talking about vaccines, if I were to meet with a pool of, let's say, Texas media people and said, you know about Perry, right? And Gardasil? No. HPV? Merck? No. You don't know anything about that? No. Okay. Wow. If you ask these people, what do you know about? What is your frame of reference? Tell me what you know about Ebola.
That's right. It's amazing. Lionel, we're wrapping up the show now. LionelMedia.com, at LionelMedia on Twitter. Thanks for joining us. That's going to do it for this edition of The Alex Jones Show. We'll be back tomorrow with more breaking news. Check out InfoWars Nightly News tonight. All the breaking news at Infowars.com. We'll see you tomorrow.
In the past decade, we have witnessed unparalleled scientific discoveries in the area of health. But no one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. DNA Force is one of the most expensive formulas to produce. Some of the ingredients in DNA Force are $12,000 a kilogram. We are using the coveted, patented, only American source of PQQ, CoQ10, and more. You want the best that's out there at the lowest price anywhere? Well, we're bringing you a total win-win. The ultimate value, cutting-edge, trailblazing game changer that also supports the InfoWar. We have produced a limited run of DNA Force, and it will take up to 12 weeks to produce more once we sell out. Secure your DNA Force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. DNA Force from InfoWars.